to me, caffeine, mostly in the form of coffee, has been nothing short of the limitless pill. Welcome to the True Health Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lonnie Bagwell, stress, inflammation, and functional health clinician.
And I'm your co-host, Bridget Spurgeon, metabolism and nutrition expert.
This podcast is where we bring hope, truth, and inspiration for your holistic health journey.
Because the world needs the best version of you.
Hey everyone, welcome to True Health Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lonnie Bagwell, with
Bridget Spurgeon. Hola.
The Bridget Spurgeon, and today we're going to be tackling a topic that in just about every circle in preparation for today's podcast and talking about it with patients every single week, week in and week out, it still continues to maintain a high level of controversy, lots of emotion behind it. Some people desperately wanting to understand it, and some people desperately completely ignoring anything about it because they don't want to make any changes with it. Today, we're going to talk about the controversial topic of coffee and the caffeine that can or cannot come with it. So, and we were just talking pre-show, kind of prepping, Bridget. Tell the listeners a little bit more about your relationship when it comes to coffee.
So I was a coffee drinker probably in my teens and college, grad school as well. I would pull all-nighters, and that's how I got through the night. So I developed an unhealthy coffee habit there. And then actually, this is funny, but when Sandy and I started dating, he was not a coffee drinker, and he said, "Hey, so like we're together now. I don't drink coffee, so I don't know that you should drink coffee." And I just was young and dumb, and I said, "Okay, sure." And I literally just quit drinking coffee. Period. That's it. Quit for 19 years. End of 2020, had a cappuccino here or there in South Africa that was actually amazing, and I brought coffee back into my routine. It started with like one a week, and then it was like probably every other day, and now it's a little bit more daily. So I am enjoying daily coffee. But here is my thing with coffee. For me personally, I don't drink poor quality coffee, period. It tastes disgusting to me. I'm very aware of what I put in my body. So literally when I go to a new place, I'm like scoping out who has organic coffee.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I've been part of on that journey with you a little bit when you were here in the office, and it's been fun because you've been bringing bean back from all over the world in your adventures. So that's been fun, which kind of speaks to my coffee story too, because I actually didn't do any kind of caffeine for all the way through undergraduate for whatever reason. I don't know. I just didn't really do it, and then I didn't start coffee until friends had gone on a chiropractic missions trip, brought some quality bean back from Bolivia and elsewhere in South America. And next thing you know, I really got into like the taste and the origin. And that's my nature, is like, I want to go all in on something and learn about it and understand the flavors and the science and whatnot. And then so, with doing that, I started consuming caffeine at a higher level than I ever had. And of course that had its own, effect that I was a huge fan of at the time. And then, so coffee entered my world, but then also at the same time, for whatever reason, up until just a few years ago, I would always go through seasons of coffee. So I'd have it, and then I wouldn't have it, and then people may not remember that are listening to this, but there wasn't that long ago when cold brew and all that stuff didn't exist, and so the thought of having a hot beverage living here in the South was miserable to me. So I would go through like summertime, no coffee, and then wintertime, I would love to have that emotional connection of a hot cup of coffee walking outside when it's 40 degrees, or, going to the mountains or something like that. So mine was very seasonal. It was never like automatic until the cold coffees came out, and then it became automatic. And then unfortunately, that's when I got to learn about what is likely a genetic predisposition for slow metabolism of coffee, because now I have negative effects of caffeine. And so I have to be really careful about how I have what I have and when I have it. So I have a lot of story as it relates to coffee. And so I've been up and down and all over the place on the coffee journey. So I really don't have a bias. I guess if I have any bias, it's that I wish that my body was different so that I could choose to have it whenever I wanted. I guess that's my bias.
Sure.
I just want to be optimal, and so I feel like I'm less than optimal with it, and that's my constant ongoing fight. So we're working to clean my liver up better than ever, turn off genes. That's kind of where I'm at with my story. But as we dive into this saga called coffee and its associated caffeine. And we will get into the science of it. We definitely are going to give like tips, tricks, and strategies. Kind of if you're going to do it, if you're not going to do it, how to do it, how to not. We're going to talk about all that like we always do. But let's talk a little bit more about our relationship with coffee as it pertains to patients. And so I know that's something that you deal with on a regular basis, like you were saying, to the point where now you've had to do like educational videos as a part of our programs because it's such a common occurrence. And so to give our listeners a little bit of an insight as to, I guess, how it just plays into their lives, but also how maybe it impacts and has affected people's health.
It's so interesting, and it is such an emotional and controversial topic because I believe if I did not allow coffee on my nutrition plans, I believe that I would have people that would disqualify themselves on that one fact alone, no matter what results we could give them hope of achieving. It is that emotional and has really become a comfort to a lot of people. And I believe, especially these days when we have amazing milk frothers and just like you said, cold brews, and we have access, like coffee has become an experience. And
Yeah, they've done a great job of doing that, haven't they? They took a brewed plant,
that
and
doesn't
bean.
taste good.
Right, they're right, and inherently, yeah, exactly. Inherently doesn't taste amazing to our tongue. It's bitter, in fact, which is part of the biochemistry of it, and they made it an experience and a multi-billion-dollar experience.
Yeah. So two things. So we actually do include coffee on our weight loss programs, and so part of my education on that is how to the best practices for drinking coffee. But I find that I also have to address like coffee addiction in a sense, because I'll be able to identify when someone certainly has a dependency on daily coffee or is drinking too much of it, and certainly that is going to have health ramifications. So as a clinician, I have to assess and be aware of that, and then even speak to the root cause, like, why do you feel like you have to have 3 cups of coffee a day, and get to the root cause. And really, being in the realm of metabolic pathways, which really is about energy, I find like I want to educate someone that I don't want you to have to take a stimulant to feel your best. I want you to feel your best just naturally from the inside out. We want to help your body heal so you can have proper function, but then you can just enjoy a cup of coffee socially, or every now and again. You don't feel like you have to have 2 cups of coffee a day.
Yeah, and that is something that has been a hallmark of no matter whenever anybody who knows me would know that I've said that from the beginning. Is that if it ever feels like I need it, I will not have it. Like I get to the point at any time ever if I ever felt like I'm going to we have a coffee maker here at the office, right? And so if I'm going to grab it because I feel like I need it, I will purposely not do it and likely take 2 weeks off. And now at the same time, because I've done that cyclically over the years, I also haven't suffered a lot of withdrawal, because even the inkling of feeling like I'm becoming addicted or whatever, then I just and it keeps me happy. It's like because I keeping my first priorities. I've always made it a point to anytime that I ever felt addicted, anytime I ever felt like I have to have this, or I need it to get through the afternoon. I would suffer through the afternoon. That was the line in the sand. I'm coming off of it for a week or 2 weeks. I don't want to have that dependency. I trust my body to produce the necessary energy. And at some point in my mind, the caffeine now has become an interference, not an enhancement. But there's no doubt about it. And I do want to talk to our audience about caffeine is nothing short of, and coffee, even with its antioxidants and such, it's nothing short of a performance enhancing drug. I mean, on one hand, that's amazing. On the other hand, you have to know what you're dealing with. Like you're handling and choosing to participate in something that is a manipulator of the body, right? And there's a lot of things that are, right? There's different nutrients that do it at different levels and produce good positive outcomes. And so we're not going to vilify coffee, and we're certainly going to talk about the positive benefits of it, but we got to talk about all of it. And so if somebody's listening to this show and they were dying for us to be like a champion for coffee, or they wanted us to, vilify coffee, they're going to get frustrated, because as clinicians, we're going to tell you things like it can be amazing, it can do some negative stuff, it really depends on the patient, and we're not going to take the cookie cutter approach to anything, even controversial and tough to talk about things like coffee and caffeine, right? So, what are talk about just for a minute about some of the benefits as you see it of coffee being that performance enhancing drug, just something that's a great can be a great benefit to someone's health.
Well, I mean, certainly being an athlete, I've used caffeine. Certainly, I'll put a little caffeine in my body before a race or with endurance races where I've done like 12-hour races or ultra marathons. Sometimes 5 hours in or something, a little bit of caffeine is a good boost. But also sometimes while racing, like your cortisol, like your adrenaline, everything is so high. I know my body so well that I could even be like, hey, actually, my body can't handle the additional stimulant right now. So I've certainly used it for racing. And then just metabolically, and once again, with me being in the weight loss space, it is a metabolic enhancer. But my thing as a holistic practitioner is like, we don't want to, like I said earlier, we don't want to rely on a stimulant. My goal for my patients is to heal your metabolism so you don't need the stimulant, but we still can't deny that it is a metabolic enhancer. So it is nice to have the benefits sometimes of a green tea or some black coffee in your day. It certainly too can stimulate bowel movement, so we can see the benefits that way with our patients. And then the other part of it that I notice is something called the whoosh effect, and a lot of people are aware of that. But as you're losing weight, part of what your body can do is it like reconstitutes cell, like as you're losing fat, it reconstitutes the cells or the interstitial space, so it hydrates. So you might be losing fat, but you're not seeing it on the scale, because it's holding on to that water. But then it can take something that can create a release, which we call that whoosh effect. So literally, I've had patients like they'll lose weight, then their scale will say the same thing for 3 or 4 days, and then like literally the next day they can lose 5 pounds due to the whoosh effect. Well, coffee or caffeine can be a igniter of the whoosh effect. Interestingly, alcohol can be an igniter of that whoosh effect as well. So we can see that for someone who's not like a regular caffeine drinker, and they put a little bit in, and then it just creates that whoosh effect, and they release 3 5 pounds.
Yeah, those are, and I think most people would be familiar. That's awesome for the people to hear, to understand, because sometimes if they're feeling water retention, if they're, they might be drinking caffeine, they can start to even just understand their day to day water balance, their water tables from what you just said, which is awesome, because I'm sure that's something people aren't familiar with. Most people are familiar with the idea that it can kick up metabolic rate or open up the adrenals, right, and be a immediate source, kind of instant energy, which we're going to talk about a little bit more when we get into the science of it. My number one thing by far is that, to me, caffeine, mostly in the form of coffee, has been nothing short of the limitless pill. And I don't know if people will get that reference, but it's the idea that it just opens up the mind. Like, the amount of focus that comes in a cup of coffee, to me, is my most favorite thing that could ever come out of a performance enhancing drug. Like, all the other benefits of all the other types of things that we would eat naturally, and all the things we would never touch that are so unnatural. But when you can go from 0 to 60 in the category of focus, and as a clinician, to be able to go into a shift of seeing dozens of patients and just have that just incredible focus, like, that is my ultimate goal for every single shift. Like, I want to be present, I want to be dialed in, I want to be able to connect the dots as a clinician, be effective, connect with patients, and that's my favorite thing. My favorite, and it's absolutely second to none, when it comes to that. And I'm going to just say this too, for a lot of people, we can eat a bunch of berries and take a bunch of other supplements and things like that, and those can be amazing and natural and beneficial, but nothing is as effective as caffeine in doing that, in my experience. And there's other, and again, there's other ways that we help people even in those categories of cognitive function and such. But caffeine's just incredible at it. It's really effective. And most people, again, might be aware of that too, or I guess a lot of people be aware of that, since 80% of the United States in some ways affected by caffeine on a daily basis, right? So this isn't so foreign, but we want to honor the fact that it is pretty incredible and it has some really good benefits to our health across the board. Now, with that, let's talk about some of the science behind caffeine, and coffee, and help people understand what's exactly happening inside their body. And we're going to put to bed, I guess, a couple of ideas that are potential concerns, or and I know we're going to throw some people some curveballs here too. So let's talk about digestion. So when you drink coffee, okay, then a lot of people will say that it helps me digest food better. Now, and you just mentioned it, right? It can help with bowel movements. Now, what most people don't realize is that, so when you drink coffee, you're going to increase your gastrin release, okay, which then is going to increase gastric acid. And gastrin is what's going to impact those bowel movements more than caffeine. And that's really, really important because people think I need the caffeine in order to get the bowel moving. And it can be a stimulant, like you mentioned, but also we got to remember that caffeine it's just, I called it, I know it's kind of funny and it's not entirely accurate, but I called it the hormone bully because just what it does is it seems to impact a lot of different hormones, not just come through with the caffeine and force a muscle response, right, when it comes to bowel movements. And I think that's really important because it also affects things like ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So I think you might have mentioned that as well, or
I
maybe you
didn't.
mentioned that. I'm not sure, but ghrelin is their hunger hormone, right? And I've used it for that. That would be my second favorite thing from caffeine over the years, is like, because I like to eat. I mean, I came from being an offensive lineman, eating 10,000 calorie plus a day, right? So I love the idea. If I drink a cup of coffee, I no longer want to eat all those calories, right? So I've used it for that over the years. But the cool thing about this conversation is that the science, the actual research says that you don't need the caffeine piece. So if you're out there saying I can't have a lot of caffeine, you can drink decaf and still benefit in the bowel category, because it turns out that it's not just caffeine, right? It's actually the hormones that are affected, and also appetite suppression. So good news for those of you who are anti caffeine or can't handle it, or even like myself need it in like highly controlled moderation, as it turns out. You can still drink decaf and get great benefits in digestion and bowel function.
That's a great question. Who should not be taking in caffeine? And certainly, we should never be dependent on caffeine. We've already discussed it's a PED, a performance enhancing drug. It's a stimulant. It's artificially stimulating the body. However, there are some categories of people who just really should be aware of their caffeine intake. So, who would be the top two or three categories?
Yeah, the first one's going to be tough for people to know without testing, and the second is going to be easier for everybody. Easy way for everybody to look at it. First of all, there are people who, like myself, may have activated genes that cause slow metabolism. So if you metabolize caffeine slowly, then and I'll tell my story real quick with that. But what happens is that because I metabolize caffeine slower, it might take a few days, for it to clear my system. Whereas, you, Bridget, might clear it in 30 minutes. And so you don't get the bioaccumulation that I get. And so now I can drink the same amount of caffeine or eat the same amount of caffeine for 3 consecutive days, but I'm getting accumulation of it. And for me, the effect of that is I hit a tipping point and it triggers a migraine. And then now you take that coupled with the fact that if depending on stress levels and so, can trigger it sooner, that can be harder hitting, so, and paying attention to my body, which leads me. So with genetics testing and learning at your SNPs, you'd be able to know, do you or do you not metabolize caffeine at a higher or slower rate, faster or slower rate. The other part though is that everybody can just simply pay attention to how it affects their body. And for that means that for a lot of people that are listening right now, that means that you're going to have to do a reset, which means you're going to have to come off of it completely, right? Which probably scared, like we just lost half of our listeners right now, I feel like. But anyway, so you have to come off of it completely so we can get a good clean look at your biochemistry and then reintroduce it and see how your body's actually responding to it. And I liken it to my journey with nutrition. I mean, I ate so much junk that I didn't, and I would say, no, I'm fine with that. I didn't, that doesn't negatively impact me until I took it out and added it back in. And things that I was eating that I thought was okay, I just had beat my body down so much that I thought they were okay. And turns out like I eat that thing and it gives me diarrhea. I eat that thing and it makes me nauseous. Like I gotta, like I want it out of my body immediately. And it's the same thing with caffeine. If we actually take the time to come off of it and do a reset and reintroduce it, then we're going to get a good clear look at how that's actually impacting us. And by the way, from a performance enhancing drug standpoint, if you come off of it, when you reintroduce it, you don't need very much to get maximum benefit. Most of the benefits that people want, right? So now you can reduce your consumption just by doing a reset. So
Exactly.
that yeah. So the first people are those that don't metabolize it well. Everybody needs to look at their body, and then the second category, I guess, overall category would be those people who just have burnt out adrenals, thyroid conditions. Most people don't know this, but it's related to this topic. Is that or to this point is that if you have adrenal fatigue is the number one uh, uh, um, reason why all the medications for thyroid say that you shouldn't take them. So, number one contraindication for taking a thyroid medication is if you have adrenal fatigue. Now, I know you're smiling because this just blows our mind. This is so ridiculous that the high majority of people who have thyroid conditions have adrenal fatigue, and yet no doctor. You're probably and again, I can't prescribe medications. I'm not a medical doctor. This is not medical advice. I'm not telling. It's just kind of one of these things that gives it's like a head scratcher that if you have if you have adrenal fatigue, then it's a contraindication. Just read the label, read the package insert for your thyroid medication. It'll tell you don't take the medication. Well, this is kind of the same thing. It's like if you have adrenal fatigue, then we don't need to be pumping those adrenals even harder. We need healing. We need recovery, right? We need to be looking at some lab work, maybe, testing some neurotransmitters and hormones and figure out how to get you back to a healthy state so that then you can choose to be able to participate in this thing called coffee or caffeine. And that reminded me of one thing that I think is one of the most important points that I don't want to miss is that I love the way we're talking about this because it's about the choice. It's about freedom.
Mm.
It's about like I want to be healthy so that I can choose. I don't ever want to be locked in a place where I feel dependent on it. I'm not going to be as effective for patients or for my family. I'm going to be moody and irritable. Therefore, I have to. I can't control what I eat, so I need the appetite suppressant effect of it. Right? That's the like true health freedom, which we talk about all the time. That's what that looks like. It looks like being healthy so that if you choose to do like you're choosing to do it because you like the positive effects of it, and at any point you can choose not to do it and you're still walking in that freedom. And that's exactly the place that I've fought to be in over the years as well. So I think that's a really important point that I wanted to not have us miss. Anything else
Yeah.
on the positive side or effects of coffee, or anything else on those that should not be participating in the consumption of coffee or caffeine?
Yes, two things. One, as you were talking, my heart actually just got really sad for those people really struggling with adrenal fatigue. They don't even know what they're struggling with. They just know
Yeah.
that they can't get through the day. They wake up tired. They don't have energy to focus, to be productive. And so, what are they doing? They're using coffee, honestly, just to survive. They're in survival mode. And if that is you, I feel just really sad. Like my heart goes out to you right now. But I almost just want to say, be careful because what you're doing to survive will cause a crash because that's when adrenal fatigue turns to adrenal burnout and it's very hard. It takes a lot of clinicians and testing and money to come back out of that. So, definitely get some testing done. Seek out a functional professional to heal your body from the inside out because survival mode will burn you out. The second group is to those, and I've dealt with this personally, is estrogen dominance. And so, certainly I specialize working with obesity, and with obesity very commonly comes estrogen dominance. And I have suffered from estrogen dominance myself. I have a history of polycystic ovarian syndrome. I have a history of infertility. I also have, gosh, this was probably within the last year, I found a painful lump in my breast. And immediately, I went straight to testing for cancer. I'm fortunate where I have access to those resources, and my mom had just passed from cancer, so I was hyper aware. But that testing was so important because it revealed I mean, my estradiol was like through the roof. And then we looked at some other markers. It was my reverse T3, incidentally, and my LDL, which were all stress markers. I obviously, did this lab work with Dr. Bagwell, and worked through these together. And the assessment was, because I was coming off of a season of grief, my body was just in high stress mode internally. And I was to actually, my caffeine consumption had gone up slightly, which was just feeding this monster inside of me, this like hormone imbalance, which I just wasn't aware was going on. And so my solution, one of the solutions, was actually to back off. So I went straight to decaf or no caffeine for a while, so that my body could come back into balance.
Yeah, that's so good. And we can, as much as caffeine, coffee can be a good thing and it has positive benefits. I just feel like in the world today, the stress that we're under, whether you're going through, I almost want to say like involuntary stress, you've been impacted by things, or choices that we're making, and we're driving, we're thriving, all this stuff that it does put a lot of people in the categories that maybe should be on the low end to no end of the spectrum of caffeine consumption, right? I was just thinking as you were saying that, when we go through these things where we have stress, which can both indirectly and directly affect our gut and our ability to absorb nutrients, our ability to metabolize things, right, our ability to mobilize those and use them for good. Caffeine actually plays a huge role in that. There's warnings about how caffeine can affect increase or decrease absorption of certain medications, which means that it's going to, and you're going to get a higher dose or higher absorption rate of some of the pills you might be taking, or it could be suppressing that. It could increase and make a more rapid metabolism of the chemical that you're putting inside your body, or it can actually cause you to excrete it too fast so you don't absorb it, or it could actually cause it in some people to excrete it too slow, so you're getting, again, a hyperdose out of the same dose that you're taking. And again, we don't operate in the world of medications. I just know that that's some of the warnings that are out there. But that also does affect us and how we actually work with patients and what we recommend in our protocols, because it does the same thing. It can affect your body's ability to metabolize the nutrients and supplements that we're recommending, right? Their ability to excrete it, their ability to absorb it. And so it's really important to know, like, is your gut healthy? And if you don't have a healthy gut, then caffeine is going to, you already start off with an imbalance in your digestive system. Caffeine is either going to upregulate or downregulate that, and it's going to affect the treatments that we're doing to actually help correct the problem, right? And so if it sounds complicated, it doesn't have to be. All right. But we have to have a conversation about it. And that's what these podcasts are about. Like, we're going to talk about this stuff so we can start the conversations, that are specific to each individual patient. And specifically when it comes to that, like magnesium, maybe one of the top deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies, mineral deficiencies in the world today, that's one of the ones that's directly impacted by caffeine, actually. So it actually can cause you to absorb less magnesium, creating more of a magnesium deficiency, which is already a problem. People are already deficient in magnesium most of the time. Also, a lot of people, this is what's crazy, people will actually take or be drinking caffeine every day, and then they'll say, I started taking B vitamins because I needed more energy, even on top of the coffee that they're drinking, right? Well, it turns out that caffeine will actually decrease your body's ability to absorb vitamin B. And so now we have this, like, now we took $1 billion industry and added on $100 million industry, right? So caffeine first, and then now we're taking all these B vitamins and supplements to try to make up for, the energy that's been depleted through chronic caffeine consumption, right? So now we're creating this negative feedback loop. And anyway, the point is that everybody's different. You need to test your body, do a reset, talk to us, let us walk you through it and talk you through it. And then we can get to the bottom of, what your next best step is, we like to say. So So with that said, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode and talk about what are, and we don't really have like this is your one, two, three, four things when it comes to coffee. Let's just talk a little bit for a minute about what is our what are our top kind of perspectives when it comes to caffeine. So if you're somebody says, "Hey, talk to me about coffee. What should I do?" What's your number one approach to coffee slash caffeine?
My first approach with our patients is actually to talk about the quality of what they're putting in their body. That's certainly a conversation with everything we put in our body. So we're shifting the way that they drink their coffee. So shifting from just drinking a Starbucks or a regular, like a Folgers or a regular coffee. So coffee and tea, they're the most pesticide laden crops. And so literally, if we're not drinking organic, we are just choosing to put toxins into our body. And so switching to organic sources, looking for high quality. This is why I love looking at beans like around the world. And I've got to a place where I can just like taste good,
Hmm.
good, fresh, good quality coffee. We also look at the acidity. And I know that's something that you look at when you look at the quality of your beans, Dr. Bagwell, is the low acid varieties of that.
Right.
And then also we're looking at, what is a person putting in their coffee, because that can be sometimes
That's
even
good.
worse than the coffee itself. And
Right.
so we are certainly in a diet culture where people are doing sugar-free, fat-free creamers and thinking that they're doing healthy things for their body, but literally they're just setting themselves up for failure metabolically and toxins. And so I'll switch the creamer someone's using and the sweetener someone's. Ideally, if you can go without any of these things. So I personally alternate. I actually love like the cold brew. I don't do cold brew too much because the caffeine tends to be higher, but I love doing like an iced Americano, and that just like a chilled coffee, just that bitterness.
Yeah.
It tastes really great to me. But I also love frothed milk and I love a cappuccino. So if I can get I always look for the highest quality creamer that I can put in there. And I'm such a nerd. I literally will ask the barista to see what they have in their oat milk or their coconut milk, because sometimes it has like Oatly, for example, has rapeseed,
Right.
and Oatly is a creamer that froths really nicely. So the good coffee houses like to use it, but it has rapeseed in it. And so I was like,
Yeah.
darn it, I can't use oat milk anymore. And so I know when I was in Huntersville, Defined, they actually got like a really nice creamery that they get their regular milk from, and I'd actually use that. And so I'm just looking for the highest quality creamer that I can use, but I also don't want to be using a creamer on a daily basis. So I like to alternate between a black coffee and a creamer coffee. So those would be my top tips as far as the quality of what we're putting in our body.
Yeah, that's good, and I echo that. I'm dairy free, but but that means you have to pay attention even more so because the alternatives, you know how it goes. They start making it well, and then they make it cheaper, and then now there's 20 varieties out there, of which 19 of them are inappropriate, for human consumption by our standards. And so anyway, so I do, and there are some amazing things out there when it comes to add-ins. Like I know. I can't think of his name right now. He's a surfer, Lade, maybe
Hamilton,
Hamilton, maybe, or
Laird,
yeah.
yeah.
And so he had a really cool Laird Hamilton is what it is. And so he has like a coconut creamer that has like superfoods in it, like lion's mane mushroom, and I just love the idea that we can have adaptogens in our coffee. While we're stimulating, the adrenals a little bit, and that's what takes what could be a good food turns it into a great food for the body. So yeah, so I think that you're right on with that. Organic, shade grown, low acid. These are all things that are a better choice. And yeah, it costs a little bit more, but nothing costs as much as the bad health effects that comes out of putting all these toxins inside our body.
Do you know what we should
Go ahead.
talk about? Coffee is actually very commonly a source of mold.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I'm glad you said that because I thought about that when you were talking about your top kind of focus is how it's processed. And so, and I've had lots of great conversations with our local baristas that are in these top-notch coffee shops, and how they air dry it, how they sun dry it. These are really important things to help reduce and eliminate any possibility for mold. Whereas with the cheaper beans, this is a major concern. Mold in general is a major concern that we have to be aware of it. But my goodness, with 80% of Americans drinking coffee, and the high majority of those drinking mold laden coffee because of the mass production of it, this becomes a health crisis. And so that is absolutely critical, because, and like so many things, whether it's supplements, it's food, it's coffee beans included, it's not so much, even you can have amazing quality bean and then process it poorly, and absolutely make it a health concern versus a health enhancement. So what's
Yeah.
your second focus when it comes to how people should approach coffee and caffeine?
So it's combating some of the side effects or the characteristics of coffee intake. And so we give our patients minerals to take on a daily basis because, I mean, typically people are just depleted of minerals in general, but coffee does, just like you said earlier, depletes minerals. In fact, a lot of our patients get a fermented B vitamin complex as well as they start their programs. Same thing
Hmm.
that you just mentioned, can deplete B vitamins in the body. So it's almost just protecting that use and making sure that we're supporting the body so that it can function optimally, so that the metabolism can heal. So minerals, and a lot of times we're recommending patients put in their coffee or in their water. And then we also like to do about a liter of alkaline water a day. And so, and coffee consumption, certainly, and you may talk about this, we recommend that in the morning, and then also in the morning doing some alkaline water as they're drinking that. So rehydrating, but then also combating some of the acidic effects that coffee has.
Yeah, I think that's important to talk about the hydration factor, right? So if you're going to drink brewed coffee, with water, and this is a controversial topic when it comes to coffee, because almost everybody will tell you that it's a diuretic, and it is. But the better question, we're all about asking better questions, is to what degree is it a diuretic? On a scale of 1 to 10, is it a 10? And it's just like you drink 6 ounces of water and it's going to pull 12 ounces out of your body, or is it a mild diuretic? And in this case, coffee is a mild to moderate diuretic. But if you're drinking brewed coffee, or adding water to your espresso like an Americano, then you are hydrating probably equally to the amount that you would lose. So that's really important, because a lot of people are walking around thinking, "Oh, I drank coffee, therefore I'm dehydrated." Well, that may not be the case, or they may be dehydrated, but it may not be because of their coffee. And so now, if you contrast, if you're going to drink espressos, cortados, et cetera, those types of drinks where there's mostly just the espresso and not water, then you are going to end up having a negative effect for dehydration, and you do need to consume additional water along with that. So it could be something as much as 8 to 12 ounces per espresso drink that you're drinking in order to be able to stay hydrated. And so that's really important. That would be definitely an important tip, because we could talk all day long, and we'll have whole episodes dedicated to hydration and water and how important that is for life. And so it makes no sense to consume caffeine and then live dehydrated, right? Or consume caffeine and don't get sleep, or right. That doesn't make any sense, because now we're losing all the positive benefits. So very good. Well, I think that's going to wrap up our episode today on coffee. Although I imagine we'll be revisiting this amazing topic and controversial topic and emotional topic here as we talk through other episodes. But before we leave, Bridget, anything else that you want to share with anybody on this topic or any other?
I'm good.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us again on True Health Solutions Podcast. Make sure that you like the episode, like True Health Solutions Podcast, so you can make sure you get all of the notifications, and make sure that you click the links to be able to connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. We look forward to hearing from you. Remember, this is the start of a dialogue. This isn't just an educational experience. Make sure that you're reaching out, asking questions, sharing this with friends and family. Let's start the dialogue. Let's get healthy together and find these solutions together. So we appreciate you. We love you. And we look forward to hearing from you. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us today on True Health Solutions Podcast. Make sure that you click to subscribe. Also, go to our website, www.truehealthcharlotte.com, where you can download any resources related to today's show or any future shows. And lastly, if you search for True Health Center Group on Facebook, you'll be able to join our free health community. We look forward to seeing you there.